Ellen Herzman is one of the writers whom a group of women that I meet with in Geneseo, and we have been together for over 8 years now. Hard to believe. But this year, Ellen has traded her life as a full-time resident of Geneseo, a writer and actor. She's a member of the Geri Actors, Rochester's traveling troupe of senior performers. Sorry, that's hard to say. Geri Actors. For a stint as a temporary Brooklyn resident, an enthusiastic tourist, and a full-time grandmother. Tonight she will read Oh, Tannenbaum.
It is still on. Okay, good. All right.
Is it still on? We don't have to test. Is it still on? Okay. Yeah, okay. All right.
Every holiday season, our house stands out like a sore thumb from among the gaily lighted and festively decorated homes on our street. I prefer to think of the sober exterior of our house not as dreary and unwelcoming, but as politically correct. No manger scene to offend militant nonbelievers, no menorah to disturb anti-Semites, no multicolored Kwanzaa banners to upset any closet KKK members in the neighborhood, no blow-up Santa, no red-nosed Rudolph, no wire mesh deer grazing on the lawn to sadden those who think we've taken Christ out of Christmas. An evergreen wreath on the door does the trick for us. But inside, there must be a living, breathing, shedding Christmas tree. Every Christmas of my conscious life, there has been a live Christmas tree in the home where I've celebrated Christmas. It is for me the sine qua non of holiday decorations. It is the last to go up, as close to Christmas Eve as possible, and the last to come down. Certainly not before Little Christmas by tradition, and sometimes much later by inertia. I vividly remember, for instance, undecorating the tree on January 16th in 1991 at precisely the moment they said the Gulf War would start. Bombs were dropping on Kuwait as I packed up the ornaments. I was dismantling the symbol of peace on earth just in the nick of time. For almost half my life, even after I was married and had my own children, the most important tree was the one at my childhood home in Yonkers. The Christmas tree was the most absurdly magical thing that ever happened to our house. Certainly, I thought that as a child, and the older I get, the more absurd and the more magical it seems. It required my mother's buying the tree a few days before Christmas, hauling it up 3 flights of stairs, sticking it out the kitchen window to store on the fire escape until the late afternoon of Christmas Eve, when my father came home from work and shopping and bar hopping, ready to put it up. It was one of the few projects that the family ever did together. The tree of my childhood had knobby, multicolored lights, Christmas balls from Poland via the 5 and 10, tinsel garlands and tinsel icicles, and a top that was neither a star nor an angel, but something that looked like the hood ornament of a car. The only so-called heirloom bought when my brother was a child was a red bird with a long gold neck and a tail of soft white bristles. In retrospect, the tree that I thought was beautiful was in fact tacky. But even then, I knew it was holy. Why else patiently bear with my father's inebriated clumsiness setting it up, when on other days his projects left us muttering and fuming? Why put everything else on the back burner to be sure the 4 of us were there to decorate it together? Why else lug it into the house in the first place, when the only people to see it were the 4 of us? We never had company, except for my aunt and uncle who lived across the hall, and then only if it happened to be a year when everyone was speaking to everybody else. The year our daughter was 4 years old, our son 10 months, and we had settled down in our own home in Geneseo, it seemed to me we needed to have our own tree, even though Christmas Day would be spent visiting family both in Yonkers and Brooklyn. Our tree was, of course, real and tackily decorated in tinsel garlands and tinsel icicles and some safe satin-covered styrofoam balls. My husband never quite shared the urgency of having our own live tree, so it became my baby. As the children grew and we began to celebrate Christmas at home, our own live Christmas tree became an absolute necessity. How heartbreaking it was then, the year I waited too long to shop for our tree. It wasn't really neglect. We had a friend who stopped for a visit a week or so before Christmas on her way to her brother's house in Herkimer. Her plan was to stay a day or two and then drive on. I was too busy entertaining her to pick out a tree and had no reason to worry because I always waited until the last week to get it. But she developed pneumonia, and then my husband caught pneumonia. So there was a great deal of time and energy put into getting them to the doctor and figuring out how our guests would get to Herkimer. It wasn't until a couple of days before Christmas that she was well enough to leave. I drove our guest to the railroad station to put her on a train to Utica where her family would meet her. I planned to buy the last Charlie Brown Christmas tree at J&A Farm Market on my way home. I drove back from Rochester, now feeling sicker and sicker myself, but nothing was going to stop me from getting a tree, except that J&A was closed for the season. Reason? Freezin', as their sign proclaimed. This and the fact that every last tree was gone. I drove to Fallbrook, which had a fruit stand that sold Christmas trees. Closed. Even the VFW had sold out. Wobbly now with what I knew was a walloping case of the flu, I mustered my last bit of energy to get myself to the Big N, where I would buy, God forgive me, an artificial Christmas tree. But even those were gone. I went home defeated. Christmas was just 2 days away. There would be no tree. The next couple of days were a blur. By now, the kids were sick as well. I must at least have fed them. I must have called our friends to tell them we were all too sick to have Christmas dinner with them. What I do remember is the four of us on that gray Christmas Eve afternoon, immobile in the living room. My husband on the couch, the children in sleeping bags on the floor, I curled up on the love seat. Not a sign or a symbol of the holiday. I drifted off to sleep in despair. Early evening, when it was dark, I woke up, but I couldn't persuade myself that I was really awake, because there in the corner of the room, right where it was supposed to be, was a wonderfully, beautifully, tackily decorated live Christmas tree. Word had gotten around that we were sick and had no tree. So two young and hearty friends of ours went off and chopped one down, and while we were sleeping, set it up, knowing that taste was not an issue when it came to decorations, hung what they could find, along with lots of tinsel, on its fresh aromatic boughs. In the years since then, there has been a lot of grief and some near misses, but we've always had a live Christmas tree. One year we had a tree but no stand. One year I bought a tree that was so crooked that by the time I sawed off enough of the trunk to get to the point where the tree was straight, it had become a formless bush, standing less than 3 feet tall. Oh yes, I was the one to do the sawing, although both my tools and my temperament were ill-suited to the job. My son does a drop-dead funny imitation of me in later years, using a hacksaw he had made in shop class and chanting, "God damn it, I hate this, fuck, fuck, fuck." I've since learned to buy the tree early and have J&A keep it until I pick it up on the last day they're open. This has saved my having to saw off the bottom branches and giving it a fresh cut before it goes in the stand. The system has worked flawlessly for many years. Well, except for the year I showed up the last day they were open, and the guy told me that someone had picked up Herzman's trees 2 weeks earlier. They were nice enough to return my money and give me the Charlie Brown tree I would have paid $100 30 years ago to buy. Now I tell them to ask for picture ID. Our Christmas trees are no longer bedecked with tinsel, partly out of taste, but mostly for the environment. Our lights are still multicolored, but tiny and bright. The branches are full of ornaments of all kinds, from different times in our lives and all sorts of people we care about. There are handcrafted birds and hearts and angels and snowflakes, bells and stars and choo-choos with the children's and grandchildren's names inscribed on them, tiny wooden toys from my mother-in-law, some ugly things the kids made in school, ornaments commemorating soccer and Mickey Mouse and Jackie Robinson, and one last Polish Christmas ball from the 5 and 10 in Yonkers. In the wee hours of Christmas, after midnight mass, when everyone else has gone to bed and the lights are out, I love to sit in the living room and contemplate the tree. By now, it is a monument to a life of tremendous blessings, and the rush of gratitude I feel overwhelms the dark and cold. But indeed, what an absurd thing a Christmas tree is. A living tree inside the house. Why go to the trouble of getting it there? Why hang a bunch of junk on it and call it beautiful? Because it inspires little miracles of patience, harmony, thoughtfulness, gratitude, generosity, and joy. Because it is holy.